Good evening again. This is an audio version of a blog entry I wrote on the Dreyfus affair. France in the 1890s maintained an uneasy tension with its largest eastern neighbour. Germany had defeated France in 1870, with the result that France lost the contested Alsace border region. While on the western side of the Rhine, today the border in the south, Alsace appears on a map to bulge somewhat awkwardly into Germany and includes the towns Strasbourg, Erstein and Schirmich, showing the stamp of the region's historic German influence. In the context of this suspicion, the French military had a mole in the German embassy in Paris, the French housekeeper. Her task was to recover documents from the waste paper baskets in the embassy and hand anything suspicious back to the French. In 1894, one of the documents recovered was a torn-up note, bordereau, carefully pieced back together by French intelligence, listing highly sensitive French military secrets and addressed to the visiting officer of the German army. Suspicion fell on Captain Dreyfus, a handsome young French officer with family links to Alsace and of Jewish faith. Minister of War, General Mercier, outspokenly suspicious of Alsatians and Jews, as well as prejudiced against Lorrainers, Belgians and Swiss, would lead the anti-Dreyfusard movement throughout the affair. He had apparently identified his ideal suspect. Dreyfus was formally arrested after a handwriting experiment by Major Dupaty de Clam. The Major had Dreyfus take dictation and proceeded to read him the text of the bordereau. Expecting Dreyfus to confess when he recognised the text, Dupaty was surprised when the suspect continued writing as asked. Dupaty imagined that at one point he had detected Dreyfus hesitating, and his hand appeared to tremble, but he then continued. Despite the failure of this experiment to return the predicted result, Dupaty arrested Dreyfus. The case against Dreyfus was circumstantial and based on prejudice. He had family connections in Alsace and he spoke German. The information leaked concerned artillery, with which Dreyfus worked. Additionally, Dreyfus was described in a staff report by the anti-Semitic Colonel Fabre as presumptuous and overbearing, and was claimed to show an excessive interest in confidential information. He spoke slowly and with an Eastern accent that was said to sound unpleasant to Parisian ears. Dreyfus's being Jewish likely played a part, but it's unclear how much at this stage, as opposed to being a much more significant factor later. This list of weak circumstantial factors neglects the much stronger circumstantial evidence in favour of innocence. Dreyfus was also described as diligent and loyal to France. He had no financial or political motive to sell secrets, and his family connections to Alsace, if anything, gave him more incentive to oppose the Germans than help them. The bordereau was written in French, while if Dreyfus were the author, he could have easily written it in German for a German audience. When summed, the total value of the circumstantial evidence on the guilt scale comes out negative, and certainly no one could establish any firm connection between him and the bordereau. Nevertheless, Dreyfus was at this point treated as the only suspect, and all other lines of inquiry were abandoned, in a classic example of prosecutors' tunnel vision. An initial opinion of handwriting analysis found the writing in the bordereau not to be a match for Dreyfus's. To overcome this, Chief Prosecution expert Alphonse Bertillon was instructed to establish a link to Dreyfus. Bertillon was eccentric, but had in the past developed legitimate forensic techniques. This led to what the media might now describe as the smoking gun. The handwriting was that of Dreyfus, according to Bertillon, but was carefully disguised to look like someone else's.
Certes, mais aussi beaucoup de différences. Les O, les double S, vous le dites vous-même.
Oui, mais elles sont délibérées.
The evidence presented to the court-martial furthermore included a secret dossier not shown to the defence. This included another espionage document including the initial D, which was known to refer to someone else, and a batch of love letters between two senior German and Italian diplomats who were engaged in a homosexual affair. This was legal in Paris at the time, but more obviously nothing to do with Dreyfus. Dreyfus was quickly tried and convicted. Either the court-martial was bamboozled into error by the secret dossier, or it followed the absurd idea that there's no smoke without fire. Dreyfus could present no evidence in his defence, except to assert that the little evidence there was didn't show anything. He was sentenced to life imprisonment on Devil's Island. The media was outraged at this leniency and demanded the reinstatement of the death penalty, although this was not possible and Dreyfus was duly transported to Devil's Island.
Soldats! On dégrade un innocent!
Irrespective of whether anti-Semitism had played a large or small part in implicating Dreyfus, afterwards it was hugely fuelled by the verdict and sentence. Doubts arose quite quickly within the army. Lieutenant Colonel Georges Picquart, despite having anti-Jewish prejudices himself, noted that the Germans still appeared to be receiving leaked information and was concerned that either the real spy had not been caught or that there was a second traitor. A discarded draft pneumatic telegram from the German embassy to a French officer, Major Esterhazy, was later obtained by Picquart via the housekeeper. Picquart made contact with a French spy in Berlin, who informed him that the Germans had never employed Dreyfus and that there was only one French officer in contact with Germany, and he held the rank of major. Picquart examined an example of Esterhazy's handwriting and realised that it matched that in the bordereau. Picquart took this new evidence to his superiors, but they ordered him to keep it to himself. While Picquart had been investigating his doubts, Alfred's wife and his brother Matthew were also working to prove his innocence. Matthew had obtained a photograph of the bordereau and got it published in a newspaper. This led to Esterhazy's accountant seeing it, who, recognising his client's handwriting, contacted the authorities. Esterhazy was close to the editor of the right-wing anti-Semitic newspaper La Libre Parole. The political right in France supported restoration of the monarchy and integration of the state with the Catholic Church, among other traditional ideas. The top men in the military belonged to the political right and were initially suspicious that the campaign to exonerate Dreyfus was a communist or Jewish plot. The very far left was also suspicious that it was a capitalist Jewish plot. Once the military leadership became aware of Dreyfus's innocence, it then feared that the truth would be too embarrassing and would support a potential Jewish communist plot. They sent Picquart abroad to get rid of him and gave Esterhazy a show trial calculated to falsely exonerate him. This was the trigger for Émile Zola to join the Dreyfusard campaign with his open letter, J'accuse. A culture war starts when proponents of a side start out sharing certain other important beliefs or principles. In the case of the anti-Dreyfusards, being for the monarchy and traditional Catholicism, and against the Republic, socialism and supposed Jewish influence. In the case of the pro-Dreyfusards, the feature was for many a pre-existing beef with the establishment. The issue in the culture war need not even be connected to the surrounding beliefs. It's sufficient that one side happens to include a lot of people sharing them. The culture war issue, here the guilt or innocence of Dreyfus, thereby becomes a proxy for all the other issues. To support Dreyfus was, by extension, to support those wishing to keep a modernised republic and withdraw the church from the state. Although those at the top of the military must, by this point, have understood that Dreyfus was innocent, it's entirely possible that the rest of the anti-Dreyfusards in society held the belief honestly, if for the wrong reasons. By this point the anti-Dreyfus side was however short on logical argument, and resorted largely to offensive cartoons. The converse was also then by exclusion true. The Dreyfusards initially contained few people with traditional views, and it followed it comprised those with more socialist avant-garde ideas. Zola was a political liberal who had openly criticised Napoleon III. Sarah Bernhardt was the daughter of a courtesan, a divorced actress known for her eccentricity of sleeping in a coffin, and had changed her surname to the Germanised spelling. The obvious wrongness of the other side therefore becomes self-reinforcing, because otherwise why would it contain so many people like that who were wrong about everything else? The other side are all nutters. The case, by now known to all as just l'affaire, was eventually resolved by the French Supreme Court ordering a retrial. Although the retrial perversely reconvicted Alfred, despite every piece of evidence being discredited, A behind-the-scenes compromise appears to have been reached with unspecified extenuating circumstances, allowing a reduced sentence and immediate pardon and release. An amnesty was also granted to anyone complicit in the wrongful prosecution. The conviction was overturned entirely in 1906. The case is seen as a cornerstone of anti-Semitism in Europe. The details of this are beyond the scope of this video. I would recommend the extensive Wikipedia entries and this video link below.